Hi, I'm Valerie Milano. I'm the senior editor of the Hollywood Times, and I just want to thank Thomas here for joining us, and I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Thanks for having me. Thomas Torrey. I'm the writer, director, producer of Long December.
Wonderful. Thanks again for being with us. It's a very interesting story about the uphill battle that musicians face to make it and the cost of their lives. Shot in a semi-documentary style with new faces and new music. This film has heart for days. You shot this in a rather new, what I'm going to call semi-documentary style. I mean, the characters think out loud at times, and the cinematography is simple and not overproduced. It's an interesting choice. It lends itself to a certain authenticity. And you wrote the script for this film as well, right? And so was this how you imagined the finished product when you wrote it?
Well, it's interesting. What you're sort of alluding to is the sort of video diaries throughout the film where the character is talking directly to the camera in this sort of in the documentary style. The film opens and begins that way, and there's these little sort of addresses to the camera throughout, interspersed with sort of a more traditional handheld verite style, but narrative aspect of the film. What's interesting is the documentary sort of clips to the camera were something we sort of found in the edit. It originally wasn't written that way. It was written as just, a traditional script about a musician chasing the dream. And we certainly wanted to put a lot of music into the story. But we approached it visually in a more traditional manner. And then after that first draft, we needed to get a little more inside of our lead character. It's a simple story without really external stakes. There's not someone dying of cancer. There's not a struggle externally. It's really the internal struggle of this musician, but really every artist like myself who's sort of asking the question, will I ever make it? When do I got to let the dream go? And those might seem like small stakes, but for artists, they can be life or death. But we needed more of an inside look into our lead character and the struggles he was going through. And so we came up with this idea in the edit, in the second draft of the edit, for him to sort of look to the camera directly through his iPhone. You're not really sure who he's talking to. Is it to the audience? Is it to somebody else? Is it to social media? You're not really entirely sure. And we're not breaking the fourth wall, but it is a nice little reveal at the end of the film when you realize who he's talking to and why he's sort of leaving these personal addresses. But it was really sort of a solve for us to get more of an idea of his interior thought.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. The stars are relatively unknowns, and Stephen Williams is making his screen debut. Where did these two leads, Williams, Charlie Kuntz, John, come from? And did you know them or of them before you cast them?
I did. So Stephen Williams is our lead, and he's a musician full time. He fronts the band Jude Moses, and this is his first time acting. He's a friend of mine. Mark McMillan is a full time musician. He's a platinum selling artist. He's very well known in the singer songwriter community, and this is his first time acting. When you make a film about music, I wanted to cast musicians who were acting for the first time as opposed to finding actors who could maybe sing. So these were both personal friends of mine. I've known these guys for a long time, and I'm an amateur musician, so I've actually played with them. And I sort of wrote the script around them. And then I surrounded them with professionals. Charlie Kuntz is a veteran actor, Emily Aldhouse, Max Hernandez. These are very established actors who I was able to put around these two musicians who were acting for the first time. And I think Stephen carries the movie. It was a big risk to sort of cast him, but I'm thrilled with his performance. And he was a dream. He's very natural, easy to direct, and I'm very pleased.
What's your instrument of choice that you play?
Uh, I grew up playing the drums. That's the one I took lessons on through high school. But then as I graduated high school, I started writing music and I picked up the guitar and piano. So I can certainly hold my own on a rhythm guitar or piano, but I'm certainly not, very accomplished. But I do enjoy writing and singing. And part of the joy for making this film, part of the reason I wanted to make this film is because I wanted to kind of be in music for a little bit. And my brother's an amazing songwriter, and I got him to, and he and I wrote some songs for this film. I repurposed some of his songs, and then I got John, Mark, and Steven, and our producer Kevin Daly, our music producer, who's a very accomplished musician and music producer. And the five of us went away. We wrote the music for the film, and I did a little bit. I did my part, but it was mostly fun to kind of watch these geniuses do their thing and then build a movie around their music. And it's set at Christmas, so we have some really great traditional Christmas carols that we do new folk Americana covers for. And yeah, it's like I said, it's a simple story and it's a whole lot of music. So and we recorded the music live on camera, which is pretty rare for a musical. Usually you're lip syncing to something produced in the studio, but we really wanted to embrace the authenticity. So we recorded all the music that you hear and see live on camera, and then we had to edit accordingly.
I was going to talk a bit about that. Obviously, in a film like this, the music is so very important, even more so than the film, not about the musicians, and this film has an amazing score with intimate performances, from the dad and mom singing to the baby to the full band performances to arena audiences. How does one wrangle that kind of score? I mean, in its very content, it would seem to be a challenge to assemble such a wonderful soundtrack.
Yeah, well, thank you. It certainly, it started with me having the idea for some of the songs, and I sort of curated what the soundtrack would be. I repurposed a couple of my brother's old folk songs, and when I cast Stephen and John Mark, they had a library of their own music, so I picked a couple of theirs. I chose some of the Christmas carols I wanted that were public domain, and then I knew I wanted to write a couple originals for the film, songs that I had already started myself as a songwriter. And then I got Kevin Daly, our music producer and composer, and I said, all right, let's curate this, let's produce this. And Kevin and I mostly, but then my brother Ruben, Stephen, and John Mark, over the preparation leading up to it, really sort of honed in on the music. We recorded demos, we figured out arrangements, and then I, wrote the script built around these songs. So we had the set list, the soundtrack, very well established and produced prior. And then on the day where we filmed, we brought in additional microphones so you can multi-track, there's like you said, a large band sort of arena show.
Yeah.
And we staged that concert, and so we brought in all those audience members as extras, and we recorded that song over and over and over all day, mic'd, all multi-track microphones, so that we could then in post-production produce the song and mix it properly, so it's not just sort of this wall of live sound. And the pub performances, we microphoned them so that we could then mix the song properly in post-production. And we just sort of did it one song at a time. And it's a simple story. It's an 80-minute film and maybe 60 minutes of music. I don't know, I haven't added it up, but it's about 2/3 music. And like a traditional musical, the story is really told through the songs. And if you watch it a second or third time and you start to pay attention to the lyrics, they are telling the story thematically of the film. And it's something most people don't pick up on the first time they watch it, but I sort of wanted to approach it like a traditional musical, and that's there all throughout it.
Hey, so Gabe wants to succeed, but he's pretty clearly torn between that reality and his family. He's grown weary of the mall bartending scene, and he wants more for himself and his family, but he sees the cost as maybe being too high. As the agent says, talent and hustle, they get you started, but luck really, takes you there. Is this the message of this film, that success isn't necessarily the residue of talent and hard work, but that it really comes down to luck? Maybe a little bit of luck, but with the price? Or is that a broken dream can turn into a new dream, as Warren says?
Yeah, I think the message is closer to the second thing you said, where certainly the former, the idea of luck really being what takes you there, that's a perspective of the character, and very much a perspective of any of us, myself included, who have been at this. I've been trying to, be a full-time filmmaker for 20 years, and I've had enough success to keep going, but not really the breakthrough to where, I can write and direct features full time. I do, I work for myself producing commercial work to feed my family. And that's the reality for the vast majority of artists. And if you live in the future, this idea that my break's around the corner or that my ambition is going to get me there, living in this future ideal, it can be really weary. You can have a lot of, just despair when that doesn't happen or the big break doesn't happen. And so the message of the film is really about being content with where you are now. And why I wanted to set it at Christmas is in December, it's this time we all take stock of the year behind us. Did all the things happen for me that I wanted? Will next year be different? Maybe this will be the year. And I've lived in that forward thinking ideal, and it's not really healthy. Certainly we want to have hope and ambition, but if it's at the cost of our present peace and contentment, then it's really can be very frustrating. So really the message of the film is a guy who is learning to be content with what he has now, his wife, his family, learning they're more important than perhaps the musical dream, but also not giving up on it. A friend of mine who watched the film absolutely loved it, and he said, Thomas, this movie gives you the permission to quit, and it gives you the permission to keep going. And it really sort of holds both of those in tension for the person who says, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I got to go get a job and just be happy there. Or the person who says, you know what, I'm going to keep going and keep sacrificing. It holds both those tensions equally.
Yeah, I see that. I want to just one last question. Getting back to the music, speaking of the soundtrack, there's so many, wonderful original songs. Any plans for a soundtrack album?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, good.
Releasing a soundtrack is core to the whole business model of the film. And it was a big part of, when we were raising money, the investors, we told them, hey, look, we've got a great film, but we'll also have a great soundtrack. So we just premiered our film at the Heartland Film Festival. And so now the film is in the festival run of its life. And we have a sales agent who's working and negotiating on selling it to a distributor. So whoever buys the film as a distributor, they could have the option to then release the soundtrack concurrently with the film. Or, maybe there's a world where we release it independently. But whenever the film does come out to the public, we'll certainly have a soundtrack. But yeah, if you're seeing this right now you can only catch the film on the festival circuit. So just have an eye out of wherever you may be and wherever we're doing our tour in the coming months. And then of course, when it's ready, released to the public, that'll be exciting. And yeah, you can count on a great soundtrack release when that happens.
For sure. Any plans for your next project?
Yes, actually. I have, so this Long December is interesting because it came when I had another project that had fallen apart. I put all my time and years and sweat into a Southern thriller that COVID sort of killed. It sort of fell apart over the COVID hiatus, and I never was able to rebuild it. And I kind of had to let that go emotionally, but also just for my own sanity. And I let that film go, and then I dove into Long December. So Long December was sort of the antidote to this other failed project. But now that Long December's out there, and it's we're nearing the end of that part of the project, I'm excited to go back to my Southern thriller and get that rebuilt and try to film that in the next year. That's very much sort of like a Southern Gothic noir about two strangers who meet in the aftermath of a car accident, and we'll hopefully film it here in the Southeast where I live. And
Where do you live? I heard a train.
Yeah, they're right outside I live outside of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, okay, good. I'm originally from Alabama.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, you don't have an accent.
I don't. I grew up in New England,
Okay,
and
that's why.
I came down here when I was after college, went to school in New York, came down here after college. My wife's a Charlotte native, so we sort of settled and raised our family here in her neck of the woods. But I'm a happy Carolinian now, 15 plus years,
Nice.
And yeah, in the film we shot it here, right outside of Charlotte, Rock Hill, South Carolina, Fort Mill, South Carolina, a couple scenes right in Charlotte proper, and then a little bit in Knoxville. So it's a very Southeast film. It takes place in December in the winter in the Southeast, and there's no snow because if you're from the South, you
Sure.
rarely see snow at Christmas.
Well, great. Thank you again, Thomas. And please keep the Hollywood Times today in your purview and let us know how you're doing and keep us posted on your next creativity. And we're the Hollywood Times official on our YouTube channel.
Thank
So
you so much,
we will
Valerie. And
yeah, go ahead.
my production company is Bad Theology. So at Bad Theology on Instagram is how you can follow the film. You can keep track of the film on Instagram at Bad Theology. And as we continue our festival run, just follow us there, and you'll see all the stops.
Perfect. I was about to ask you. Thank you for letting us know, and thank you again for all your time today.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.